Hey everyone, let's explore some of the text effects in Canva. Basically, they allowed us to add things like drop shadows, really good when we want text to kind of really separate from the background if it's hard to read. Okay, there's some kind of interesting, kind of cool effects and stuff you can do with type. Add a bit of excitement to your heading text. All right, let's jump in. All right, first thing is I'm going to click on the little zoom option and say fit and scroll to the top. I'm going to work on this first option, option A1. Actually, it's 1A, the very first one we did. Okay, so what I'm going to do is the first thing you need to know about text effects is that they can't apply to all text. So this text here, okay, sitting on top of this rectangle has text effects. Okay, this text that's inside of a rectangle, so we started with a rectangle, we added text inside of it, doesn't have effects. So if you did want this to happen, what you'd end up doing is with the T tool, click T, okay, you'd have a paragraph, I'm clicking off, moving it there. Then separately, you'd have an element and you'd go, get rid of photos, go down to shape, okay, and you'd make these two things separately. Okay, can you see the text is flashing in there? That kind of works what we want to do up here, but if we wanted to add effects to this, we'd have these two separate things. A text inside of a rectangle, they are separate. I'm going to delete you and delete you. So we've got this one. And what I want to do is have this kind of up the top. I'm going to move this down the bottom. Okay, I want this to kind of appear on the background image. Now mine stands off pretty well. Yours is probably not. You've got a different brand, different font, different color, and double click on mine and kind of move it around. That is less good. We turn my rotation back to 0, kind of get it up here. Is that worse? Yeah, it's getting a bit worse. So text effects are really good for not just kind of like styly effects, but actually making things legible, especially when there's text against a kind of a mottled background. Let's click effects, and you probably don't need me to go through them all. Okay, a shadow adds a drop shadow. The one thing I will mention is shadow and lift. For me, they feel like they're kind of the same, but they're, I don't know, they feel different. I feel like this should be called shadow and that should be called lift. So lift is, I don't know, what I call a traditional drop shadow. Can you see that kind of like, you know, the shadow, the drop shadow, but they call it lift. Okay, and shadow is just, it replicates the color that's being used in the font, okay, and just makes another copy of it. Let's zoom in. Okay, just kind of helps it stand off. The one thing about this is it confusing? It's not once you get used to it. So what happens is if I click none, we've got all these options here. Okay, if I click on shadow, what happens is all the shadow options open up underneath it and push this down. So they're all still here. You can switch to splice. You can see now splice has kind of come up and showing me my splice options. Go back to none. So if you are kind of just going, figuring it out and going, oh, I wonder what this one does, and you feel like you might have lost something, just go back to none, okay, and it will clear them all off, and then you can start again and go, all right, neon, intensity. They all have their own options. I'm not going to go through them all. The one things I do want to show you is some fonts do some weird stuff. This one here, what is this one called? This one is called, oh yeah, Gaggelin. I'm sure there's a better way of pronouncing that. But some of the effects in this one, let's have a look at Hollow. Does some weird stuff. So if your font's doing some weird stuff, it's probably not the effects problem, it's the font. It has some complexity that this doesn't know what to do with. I'm gonna undo it. I'm gonna go back to this top one here and let's go back to, shadow, actually lift. You can see here, you can play around with like how well it separates for itself from the background. All of these are just kind of like variations of it. One of the ones that are interesting is neon will wash out your color. So if you start with, let's say, black, and I click on neon, it kind of goes weird. So what you want to do is start with a nice color. Okay, so I'm going to go to my colors, start with something vibrant, and then, or not that vibrant, and then go to my effects, and then hit that, and you'll see it kind of, I don't know, works better when you start with a color. Last thing I want to show you in terms of, I'll let you play around with the effects, is one is this one here, background. That is quite a useful one. It's kind of doing the same thing but differently. This one here is a rectangle with text in it. This is a text box with a rectangle around the outside. They're actually quite different. Well, they're not. They look the same. Okay, but this one here kind of wraps around the text. And the cool thing about it is that it changes depending on the size of the text. Whereas this one is more of a frame, okay, and everything tries to fit within the rectangle. Anyway, very similar. Okay, that's the only other one you might use is that background color. Or often I'll end up just drawing a rectangle in the background because I want it to be a little bit wider than it is tall. I don't like the kind of like evenness around it. I like my text boxes to often have a little bit of extra space left and right. It's not really a rule, my rule. Okay, and this one here has roundness I like to pull off. Okay, and the color I'm going to adjust. So they all have their own kind of options in terms of like what you might do in addition. Okay. Select them, have a mess around with these. They're pretty easy to work through. Roundness, spreads are kind of a weird word, but it's just like how far out from the text, and do you want it to be transparent or not? Ooh, fancy. You've all probably done it. You click on glitch. Ooh, do love a bit of glitching. Probably the wrong color for it, but you get the idea. That is text effects. Really good for getting text to pop off the background. Oh, one last little hack before I go. I end up doing this a lot. So instead of using the rectangle, okay, and trying transparency, what I'll tend to do is turn it to none, grab my shape tool, okay, so elements, I'm going to go to shapes, rectangle, and I'm going to, depending on what sort of size you want it to be, you end up doing this. So we're doing a similar sort of thing, but I get to kind of decide like the height and the width. Okay, maybe it's like this. But you see, I want it to kind of tidy in on the edges here. If you hold down Option key on a Mac, Alt key on a PC while you drag the corners, okay, the sides, it does both the left and the right. And say I want something like that. Remember the spread on the last one? The height was exactly the same as the width of the box. And then do something like this. I want you to be black. And then I'm going to close it down, play with transparency. This one here, how see-throughiness it is. I find this is kind of a good way of cheating and like, without it being a real obvious design element, the text to kind of separate from the background quite easily. One last quick thing, if you have got effects already applied to something or it's come from a template, just select on it, click on effects, and it should open up with the effects that are applied. All right, that is it. Text effects in Canva.